For the record, because there's a concern, I don't see it that way. So far as I recall, prior to going to San Francisco, last time I had sexual intercourse with somebody was around February of 2009. I recall because I'd gone through a period of time where I had been pretty much celibate for about a year. Not necessarily because I wanted to be. I'd only had one sexual encounter in that time. But the last time I had before I went to San Francisco, a sexual encounter, was February of 2009. This was noticeable because after I got to San Francisco, I had some problems. I had to go to the hospital. And this is the subject of some disputation. But at the time, I remember what them saying is that it takes 8 years for the cells of the body to completely regenerate themselves, including the brain cells. Your brain replaces every cell in the brain within 5 years, within 8 years. 8 years. So between February of 2009 and October of 2015, I hadn't had sexual encounter with anybody. I'd actually been very, very selective even about my own personal self-care. As a matter of fact, one of the problems with being on the medication I was on is that I had absolutely no libido. And so it wasn't until after a period of time when I'd gotten off the medication, I'd gotten my body back, I'd gotten my spirit back, that I was even interested and was even capable. So I did not have a sexual encounter between February 2009 and October of 2015. After October 2015, I thought, well, maybe I'm in a situation where I'm mature enough. I've taken care of myself. I'm being conscientious, not promiscuous. And I was looking, to actually have a life partnership, even if, in the meantime I met people and was getting to know them. Between October of 2015 and July of 2016, I only had one sexual encounter, one consensual sexual encounter. In July of 2016, something happened. And after July of 2016, I said to myself, okay, you know what? I am not going to be recreationally sexually active. And that's when I began the steps to become, in my own understanding, celibate for political reasons. I have a very specific political reason for why I chose celibacy, including 100% celibacy, including masturbation. Now, I can't say that I've been completely without self-care, let's put it that way, in that meantime. But the thing about it is there are efforts at coercion that have been apparent that are things that are part of my political commitment, i.e., to be remotely stimulated without yourself actually taking initiative to engage it, almost as if there's some remote command that's trying to excitate you hormonally, including biophysiologically, and or even if you engage a scene or you engage a fantasy or some sort of daydreaming. In the course of daydreaming, something appears and comes into context you don't find to be attractive. It's not something you're attracted to. It's not something you want to engage with. And yet, the disconnect between what you want, what you desire, and then what it seems is trying to compel you, including your physiological responses, as if it is responding to some stimulation, the mind-body connection isn't quite there. The understanding that I'm willingly and knowingly and privately engaging these thoughts or entertaining these fantasies, and then at some point the awareness becomes that there's something in the background. There's something else in the background. And to be honest with you, I just don't find it pleasurable. So I'm not willing to go there. And, after a certain period of time, you also realize, well, when you withhold and when you don't drain your actual life force through acts even of masturbation, that it allows for you to fortify. You can rechannel that energy. Now, if you've got something going on where your sensitivities allow you to be made aware of other things, including things that can have an impact on you psychologically, and you don't have the capacity to ground it with even conversations with people you would consider friends or people you would consider to be colleagues or people that you would consider to be someone on a peer level that you can actually process those things with, either socially or even politically, then, the context of the consideration of intimacy, including sexual intimacy, takes on a new direction. For me, my concern now is that sexuality and the withholding of a capacity to engage in a social sphere where I can meet people that I could develop an intimate relationship with before the topic of sex even comes up is more of a concern to me than the consideration of whether or not somebody would have considered things I did in the past to be promiscuous, or whether or not somebody would have considered the things I did in the past to be exemplification of a kind of behavior or felicity they may want to engage for themselves, or they may think that they would like to enjoy with me. Yeah, I've always been a cerebral person. Everybody ever knew me knew that. And so that's actually a subsidiary. That's actually a secondary consideration here. So just to clarify, the periods of time I went without being sexually active has distinct justifications. There's distinct reasons, including being chemically incapacitated. My neurochemistry was so impacted by the medication I was on that I couldn't even engage in a certain level of higher analytical thinking that I could apply to conversation with people. So the consideration of engaging a sexual relationship wasn't even an issue. It wasn't until I got off the medication that I was able to actually reclaim my body and reclaim my own capacities before I even considered it. And so when I did, it was exciting, but you have to be reasonable. You have to be responsible. And that's why I made the decisions I did. So don't be so concerned. Don't be so concerned unless you're actually concerned, right? And I'm hoping that this is the last I have to say about this, because I am not amenable to this being the primary topic of consideration that is constantly in my background. And it's not going to be the first thing I talk about with anybody when we meet. So please just understand that. Thanks for your concern.